We have 10 attendees. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lindy Neubauer, and I'm your webinar moderator for tonight's presentation in our ongoing Business of Dentistry series presented by Eide Bailey. Thank you for joining us for our webinar entitled Marketing Your Dental Practice, Making Every Marketing Investment Count, featuring Art Wiederman, CPA, and Christy Boltz, owner of My Dental CMO. Christy's mission is to lead dental practitioners and their teams into the modern age of marketing. We sincerely appreciate you making the time to attend this evening and hope that you learn many new marketing strategies to grow your practice. Before we begin, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items. We will be recording this presentation and posting it on our Eide Bailey YouTube channel in the coming days. We will also be emailing all attendees a copy of the presentation as well as a link to the video recording when it has been published. If you have any questions or comments for Art or Christy at any time throughout the webinar, please use the chat function within Zoom. Without further delay, I will now turn the time over to Art Wiederman, CPA.
Thank you, Lindy. Thank you, everybody, and welcome tonight to our second of 12 sessions of the Business of Dentistry, sponsored by 6 local dental societies that I will acknowledge here in a moment. You are in for a real treat tonight with my good friend Christy Boltz of My Dental CMO, and she's going to teach you everything you wanted to know about marketing. I have not only witnessed Christy when she's been on stage, but I've actually brought her to California a couple times over the years to speak to our clients, and her information is dynamic and current and wonderful, and you will really enjoy it. Just want to give you some housekeeping notes here. As far as our next webinar is coming up, we have a week from tonight. I'm going to be presenting a webinar on dental transitions for buyers and for sellers. If you're interested, that's the same time next week, February 17th, and you can register for that webinar. And we have that one coming up. And then on March 10th, put that on your calendar. We did a little bit of a change in what we're doing. We're going to be giving a talk on the new Paycheck Protection Program rules and the interaction with the employee retention tax credit that can give you great opportunities to have not only to get full forgiveness of your first round PPP loan, but also to potentially put thousands, maybe tens of thousands of dollars in your pocket. And I'm going to chat about that in a moment. I want to thank everybody from the 6 dental societies that we have collaborated with. This has been a year in the making. We have a total of 18 webinars we're doing over in 2021. So I want to thank Kristen Avina, the Executive Director of the Harbor Dental Society. I want to thank Megan Francis, the Executive Director of the Orange County Dental Society. Lee Adishian from the San Gabriel Valley Dental Society. Michelle Schneider from the West Los Angeles Dental Society, Kurt Thornton from the San Fernando Valley Dental Society, and Greg Orloff from the Los Angeles Dental Society. Thanks to all of you for marketing and sponsoring this webinar. I'm just going to take a few minutes, folks, and then I'm going to turn the rest of this program over to Christy to just give you a couple of updates on PPP and HHS and alphabet soup and all this stuff. So for the PPP, for those of you who have not applied for round 2, you've got to have a 25% or greater reduction in any calendar quarter in 2020 as compared to 2019, and you can qualify for probably the same amount of money as you got in round 1. So if that's something that you feel is that you're going to need, I would say go ahead and apply. We are recommending to our clients that that you not apply for round 1 forgiveness, especially if you've had a greater than 50% reduction in your gross revenues in any calendar quarter, likely quarter 2, because there is a golden opportunity to be able to get full PPP forgiveness, as well as to get also potentially $5,000 per employee for 2020 as a refund of your payroll taxes, and then other monies. I mean, we're finding that dentists are able to get 25, 50, some 100, $200,000 in refunds, but it takes some planning. And we're going to talk about that on March 10th. If you haven't applied and registered for, and you got money from the HHS Provider Relief Fund, that fund is open. That portal is open just for registration. You were supposed to have all your information in by February 15th, but that has been put off indefinitely because HHS does not have the rest of the portal ready, but you want to make sure you get all your information together. There's a lot of information. Go on to www.hhs.gov. That's about my quick update. So I would like to now introduce my good friend, Christy Bolts. I met Christy, oh my gosh, 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. Her hair is the same color. Mine is now gray, but Christy is Christy's company is My Dental CMO. And Christy is, there are lots and lots of dental marketing companies out there. But that is not what Christy is, not a dental marketing company. She is your chief marketing officer, and she's going to explain all of that to you tonight. She is your quarterback for your marketing, and she is going to give you some unbelievable information tonight regarding what you can do to market your practice. I will tell you that I had an old accounting professor years and years ago when I went into business, who gave me this saying, and I keep this to this day. He says, Arthur, he says, you have to always market. The day you stop marketing your business is the day your business begins to die. And Christy and I have talked about that. So she's going to give you all kinds of ideas, what works, what doesn't work, and all that stuff. So without any further ado, Christy, welcome. And thank you for taking the time to talk to these nice folks here in Southern California. You are in Columbus, Ohio.
I am in Columbus, Ohio, where it is not 75 degrees.
I don't want to ask. Whenever we're part of the Academy of Dental CPAs, and whenever I'm talking to somebody in the northern part of the country, I never talk about the weather because that's why I have no friends. So thank you for presenting tonight. Again, I have heard Christy present, and she is wonderful. So I will do something that I'm not usually really good at. I'm going to be quiet, and I'm going to let you take over. You've got the PowerPoint. Folks, if you have questions, put it into the chat, and Christy, prompt me when you want to take some questions, and I'll throw them out to you. So with
Christy,
that,
could you take
welcome.
a moment to switch your view to presentation mode?
One moment.
Okay. All right, Christy, it is all yours.
All right, we're going to switch this over to presentation mode and get back to where we were. Welcome, everyone. There's something to be said for spending an hour or 2 hours after you've seen all the patients. How's that look, Lindy?
Just seeing the screens of your video.
Okay. This is what happens with technology, right?
It worked the first time.
It did work the first time, right? All right, let's kill it and start again, guys.
All right. While Christy is getting in there, by the way, folks, one thing you might consider is if you are eligible for the employee retention tax credit, you should seriously consider extending your 2020 tax returns, because we still don't know what the government's going to do, because if you do get this credit, you're going to have to add those expenses back to your income, and we don't know if that's in 2020 or 2021. They haven't told us yet. So you might consider extending, because if not, you're going to have to go back and extend, and there's a cost to doing that. So, okay. How are we doing here, guys?
What do you see?
I see the admin type view.
Okay.
There you go. Getting closer.
No.
Is there a full screen?
The view down arrow in the top left might be your magic trick.
Just when you think you've done enough of these, right?
On the far upper left, there was a button that said view with down arrow options.
How do we look now?
There you go. I think
Nope,
that's it.
that's the desktop.
No?
There it is. Magic.
That only took us 3 minutes, right?
Is everyone
Well,
awake? I see
If
there's
you
a
need to go over
message in the
3 minutes,
chat.
we'll let you go 3 minutes.
There is a message in the chat. Dr. Shah has a question about some qualifications with regards to some of these financing programs you talked about. So we'll make sure that we answer that when we break for discussion.
Yeah,
Fair enough?
sounds good. Sounds good.
All right. Again, congratulations on taking some time away from patients with everything that's going on. Usually I tell people, please throw in the chat the number of Zoom meetings that you've attended this week. And the highest number is the winner. Some of you are attending 1, 2, 3, 4 Zoom meetings a week. So tell me in the chat how many of these webinars you've attended this week or this year, okay? Tonight, we have set aside the time to talk about nothing but marketing. And the title of tonight's course, Making Every Marketing Investment Count in 2021, is your key to success. You are going to have at the end of this course a very clear plan for what you should be doing for marketing, how much you should be spending, how often you should spend it, and how to evaluate its success, okay? And before we do that, I'd like you to take a minute and go back in your mind to when we had crowds. You remember crowds? Do you remember what they felt like? Okay. This happens to be a photograph of November 2nd, 2016. On November 2nd in 2016, two teams met in a World Series game that would be remembered for ages: the Chicago Cubs and the Cleveland Indians. Originally from Northern California, believe it or not, I'm a Chicago Cubs fan, but I married a man from Ohio who is an Indians fan. The Cubs had not won the World Series since 1908. The Indians had not won the series since 1948, the two longest droughts in Major League Baseball history. The series was tied at 3 games apiece. The game was tied 6-6 in the 9th inning when all of a sudden it started to rain. And in baseball, when it rains, unlike football and other sports, we stop playing. A burst from the heavens resulted in a 17-minute rain delay. And when play resumed, the efforts of multiple Chicago Cubs players resulted in 2 more runs to give the Indians the victory. Nope, to give the Cubs the victory. My husband, as soon as it started to rain and they went to a game delay, he went upstairs and went to bed. He said, I know the Indians, they're going to blow it. I don't know that the Indians blew it. I think the Cubs that night, after that 17-minute rain delay, were just the better team. The managing decisions that night were made by 2 very famous managers in baseball: Tito Francona of the Indians and Joe Madden of the Cubs. Managers get to decide all kinds of things in baseball, okay? Just like in dentistry, you have the opportunity to make decisions about who you are going to put out on the field, who you're going to take out of the game when they no longer are performing, okay? And that night, this unexpected rain delay was not anything anyone could have planned for. Sound familiar? Is there something unexpected you hadn't planned for in the last 12 to 14 months? You see, dentistry is rich in tradition, and so is baseball, okay? Dentistry is rich in history, and so is baseball. And baseball's a little superstitious. I don't know if you're superstitious enough. Do you not touch the cracks in the sidewalk as you walk into the office. Okay. In the early 20th century, baseball was a much lower scoring game. Okay. The materials got better. As a result, believe it or not, of World War I, the materials in bats and balls got better. And as a result, we could hit the ball farther. Okay. Stadiums added additional seating to accommodate the popularity of the sport. So the stadiums bring in the seating, which means there's less room in the outfield, which means it's easier to hit a home run. And the first power hitter of the game, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Babe Ruth emerged. Okay. I don't know that Babe Ruth would even recognize Yankee Stadium now. And that is exactly what it looks like now, sitting empty. Okay. You may have watched baseball on TV during COVID. Okay. You see a batter come to the plate, and inevitably at the bottom of the screen, there are some statistics, their batting average, their home runs, their RBIs. Okay. You might see the pitcher and his ERA, how many people he struck out, how many home runs have been hit off him. There are so many statistics in baseball, we don't know what to do with them ourselves. In fact, if you remember games in person, I know it feels like forever ago, this happens to be at the Rockies Stadium. There are so many statistics on this screen, my eyes cross, okay? And how about this one? Holy cats. The problem is all of these statistics that we've seen for years, for example, when somebody gets up to the plate, batting average, hits, runs, most of that doesn't matter. You see, most of these are statistics that don't help the manager predict three things: whether the hitter will actually get on base, whether the runners on base will score, and whether your team will win. And aren't those three things that, instead of all this gobbledygook, we should really want to know? Because in the end, if you ask the Indians, nobody remembers all their great statistics up to the rain delay. They just remember that after the rain delay, or for you, after COVID, they lost. Okay? So the question is, what if you had a set of statistics that could better predict the likelihood of success in a game? What if you had a set of statistics that could better predict if your new patient was going to say yes, if your new patient was going to show up? Okay. In dentistry, we're not trying to measure the likelihood of whether or not somebody will get on base. We're trying to measure the likelihood after all of our marketing investments have been made. What's the likelihood that a new patient will actually pick up the phone and call, and that they will schedule, and that they will show up and say yes to the treatment plan and continue to be a patient and refer others? These are the statistics that we care about. Well, oddly enough, batting average is a terrible statistic in baseball. So there is a better way. There's something called on-base percentage, which actually takes into account all the times you reach first or second or third safely. In addition to getting a hit, could you be walked? Could you be hit by the pitcher? Once you're on base, you have a chance of scoring. Pretty hard to score if you never get on base. And then there's something, that little statistic down there at the bottom, called slugging percentage. Because again, if I get on base and I'm at third, only 90 feet away from scoring, is that more likely that I'll score than if I'm at first? Okay. OBP and slugging percentage are two statistics that matter way more than batting average. Okay. If I get a triple, I'm 90 feet away from scoring a run. And the game, the way that I win is I score more runs than the other team. So believe it or not, okay, and for all you numbers geeks out there, and I'm talking to you, Art, because I don't know that there's anybody else other than you and me who's a numbers geek on this call, maybe Alan, okay? There is actually something called a run expectancy table, and this is what it looks like. If there are runners at first and second, if there are runners at third, if there are 1 outs or no outs or 2 outs, this is the likelihood that someone will score. There's a chart, and it's not that hard to find, okay? So the first thing is, do you have a chart? Do you have a chart in your practice that gives you the new patient expectancy table? What's the likelihood that if someone calls on a Friday afternoon from the internet after reading your Google reviews and it's after 2 o'clock and Barb answers the phone, that they'll schedule? Do you have that table? How would you develop it? Okay. Believe it or not, there's actually a run expectancy table for every park in Major League Baseball. In Denver at Coors Field, it's probably a lot more likely that you're going to hit a home run there than at Wrigley with the wind blowing in. The air's a little thinner. The variables of the stadium influence the run expectancy table. Now, you may be thinking, Chrissy, this is crazy. I could never create an expectancy, but what is the likelihood that a new patient would schedule? What is the likelihood that they will even call? Okay. New patient acquisition isn't as simple as it used to be. You'll hear people say that about the game. God, the game's just not the way it used to be. Okay. But there are some fundamental basics that are true. We're going to talk about those tonight. You remember I said you're going to leave tonight knowing exactly what to spend and exactly how to measure it and for exactly how long to do it. I'm giving you an expectancy table, okay? I don't see any questions in the chat. Art, do we have any questions so far? People want to know when's baseball coming back, right?
So, yeah, we just have that one question from Dr. Shaw. I will tell you, I don't know if you know this, Christy, but since Jimmy's such a big Indians fan, you have a pretty good pitcher, your number 1 guy, Shane Bieber. Well, he was the pitcher, and my son was the first baseman at Laguna Hills High School. And I coached him for 3 years in Little League. And his dad and I joke all the time about how we're lucky that he coached the pitchers and I coached the hitters. Because if I'd have coached the pitchers, Shane never would have made it to the majors. So I am kind of an Indians fan myself also. We follow Shane real close. But anyway, Dr. Shaw had a question about what I brought up. You have a new practice, and 2020 revenues are higher than 2019. For the ERC, they have to be less than 80%. So for 2020, they have to be less than 50%. They have to be a 50% drop from 2020 to 2019. I would say, Doctor, about half of our clients, maybe a little more, qualifying. The specialists, not as much because they were open, but we have a good number of doctors that were down 50%. They shut down completely. They only did emergency procedures. So yeah, we have I have a spreadsheet of them that we're going to be helping with all this stuff. So yes, absolutely. We are seeing people who are going to qualify for this credit. So, okay. Christy, back to you.
I think that's it so far. So back to baseball indeed, okay? Some of you may long for the good old days, okay? The good old days for many of us are when this was the main obstacle to our marketing plan. For many practitioners who hung out a shingle, whether they were in LA County, Orange County, San Diego County, whether they were in Hollywood, whether they were in the hills, the phone was the crucial piece of success. Because you see, somebody got your practice's name from a friend. And the only thing they did after getting your name was call. A single conversation was what influenced your practice's ability. If you had somebody at the front who was exceptional, you probably had a new patient in your schedule. If you had somebody who was okay, if their friend had told them that you were the greatest thing since sliced bread, you probably had a patient in your schedule. But those days, just like phones that look like that, are gone. Okay? They no longer exist. What happens now? What happens now when someone gets the name of our practice? Okay? Put in the chat what happens now. When somebody gets the name of your practice from a friend, what happens? Okay? Well, they go here. Okay? Today is very, very different. Okay? Your website, the images you choose for that Google My Business listing, your videos, your social media channels, all of the things that people find in your online first page reputation. Many of you in your market space do not have the budget to be relevant. Hear me again. Many of you in your market space do not have the budget to be relevant for a search term like best dentist in blank. However, you absolutely have within your power the ability to control your first page reputation. Googling yourself is probably not the best way to do it, but it is a place to start. Your website should be the first result. And then for many of you, especially in Southern California, your Yelp listing may be the second one, okay? Your demand force listing, your local med listing, your health grades listing, your Facebook page, your Instagram account, wherever you are refreshing content at the most rapid and relevant rate. Rapid and relevant rate will be part of your first page reputation. For many of you, that thing off to the right there, your Google My Business listing, or the thing that shows up at the very top on your phone, is all that more than 50% of new patients see. They never look at the website. They look at where are you located, are they open now, and what do their reviews say? I remember back in 2012, I was giving a presentation in Manhattan. It was to a group of relatively what I would call affluent, experienced clinicians. These were guys who had earned their stripes on the island. And there was a guy who sat in the back of the room and you could see his hand. It was just painful for him to raise. Okay. And when we got to a point in that presentation where there was an opportunity for questions, and at that time there were no questions about PPP, okay, he raised his hand and said, "Do you think this internet thing is really not going away?" It's not. Some of you find that question ludicrous. How could somebody think that? And yet, a year ago, you may not have had the first page reputation that you had now. 2 years ago, you may have looked at this and said, yeah, I know I need to worry about these reviews, but I just really don't have the time to do it. Please, as a result of tonight's class, the title is Successful Marketing is All About Start and Stop. If you have ignored your first page reputation, the first action item is you need to start looking at it regularly. Looking at it on your own device is not the best. Having multiple people look at it on multiple devices is a better place to start. Better yet, use a third-party tool that monitors your reputation, alerts you to when you have both positive and negative feedback. And by all means, although I'll sound like a broken record, respond to all of them. Nearly once a month, I inevitably get a phone call from somebody who says, we got a bad review and we don't know what to say. And if all along you've been responding to the good reviews, it's not that big of a deal. If you only respond to the negative one and forget that you're not responding in particular to that patient, but responding to the entire internet and all the good and bad and all the trolls and all the potential patients, you must respond, okay? Your first page reputation should be a priority. Some of you may have noticed that in your Google My Business listing, there are now all kinds of options for you to indicate the safety measures that you have or have not taken for COVID-19. Are masks required? Do we have a virtual waiting room? Are we offering virtual consultations? Okay. Is there a screening? Do we offer hand sanitizer? Things of this nature. The other interesting thing to look at is when you're looking at your Google My Business listing and you pop open that reviews tab, there's some keywords that pop up. Look at those keywords. You have to look at this on a desktop. You're not going to see it on your phone. Okay. And you're going to see what people mention. Let's say you're a cosmetic dentist that prides themselves on exceptional veneers. And you notice in all the reviews that the word veneers doesn't show up at all. How could you get more reviews with the keywords you want without keyword stuffing, without shoving a phone in front of the patient saying, Bob, I'd really like you to write a review about how fantastic your veneers are on 6 through 11. Could you do that now? Yes, thank you very much. Okay. Crafting the right questions matters. A generic review is never as valuable as one that speaks to issues that are top of mind for a potential patient. A procedure, safety, hours, comfort. What are the top keywords that are mentioned in your Google My Business reviews? All digital marketing really falls into 4 distinct categories. Things that act as an opportunity to reach more people than we currently do. Okay. You might think of some of those things like search engine optimization or pay-per-click advertising. Okay. You might think of influencer marketing when it comes to reach. Then there's things that create people to act. Okay. And the content management system behind your website, which many of you probably don't even know what it is. Okay. Is one of those things. What allows us to blog is one of those things. This is probably one you're not very familiar with. The reach ones you've probably heard of. Some of you are thinking, well, yeah, Christy, I spent $4,000 on SEO last month, and I spent $1,500 on PPC, and I'm spending $500 on paid social advertising and everything in between. Okay. Then there's a component of digital marketing that focuses on conversion. All right, here's the second lesson of the night. A lot of you throw money at reach without ever looking at what converts. Going back and following your breadcrumb trail for conversion will probably save you money every single year. Your dollar becomes more effective when you measure what converts. There's ways to measure conversion. The easiest way to measure conversion is with call tracking. The second easiest way to measure conversion is form submission tracking. The third easiest way to measure conversion is live chat. And the fourth is online appointments scheduled. Please note, not requests, but people through local med or some third-party application are physically able to schedule an appointment without speaking to anyone at your office. Some of you fundamentally may say, that's not part of my brand. I don't want that to happen. Others may say, well, absolutely, that makes sense because then my team is freed up to actually communicate with patients when they're in the office. They're free to make outbound calls rather than deal with inbound requests. Okay. Again, many of you will save marketing money every year if you spend just as much time looking at conversion as you do at reach. And finally, the last area of digital marketing is engage. And typically you'll hear people talk about this when they talk about social media. What's your engagement? What's your engagement? What's your engagement? We're going to come back to that a little bit later, okay? In all of these areas in the digital space, all of those little icons and logos there are all people that will take your money, okay? And that doesn't even include the dental players. If we were to create the same circle in the dental space, it would be even bigger, okay? And there's a lot of people during COVID who signed up for things they never would have signed up for for a variety of reasons. Fear was one. More time on my hands to do research was another. Oh, I've kind of been putting this off for a while and maybe this does make sense. Picking the right areas of digital or any marketing for that reason is like picking the right players for your team. In order for me to pick the right players, in order for me to decide who I'm going to send up to bat, I have to look at the right statistics. Okay. The word of the night is funnel, and not the funnel that you put in a jar to kind of dump in the leftover ketchup into a smaller bottle. Okay. Your funnel is what's going to guide every marketing decision this year being smarter. There's only so many people who are even aware that they need to go to the dentist. And then we go one step in, and there are only so many people who your message is going to reach. Some of you have a much wider funnel at the top because you've invested for a longer period of time. Some of you have invested for a long period of time, but your funnel is so narrow because you've invested in the wrong things. Traditionally in marketing, we look at funnels just like this image on the screen. There's a lot of people searching for a dentist, and all the way down here at the bottom are the people who actually called, showed up, came in, and said yes. The idea, if you've heard Jay Baer speak, is to flip the funnel or to make the funnel more focused. Okay? Because in your market space, I can almost guarantee, as I looked at the attendee list for tonight, I don't think anyone is in a market where they have no competition. There is tremendous competition for visibility in the awareness part of the funnel. The first question you should be asking yourself is, how do I stand out in that part of the funnel? And then once I'm lucky enough to work them in, how do I get them to convert? Okay? And if we're not careful, we'll get lost in the run expectancy table data wormhole. Okay? The data matters. We're going to look at some data tonight, but the data should drive the creative. The data should drive the content that you create, not what the website company wanted to build, not the template that you bought. Your data should drive your creative. Your data should drive what patients you're asking for patient testimonials. Your data should drive the right content to the right customer across the right channels at the right time. And who has time to do all that? The data piece is the takeaway. And for many of us in dentistry, we've been spoiled by our own success because we've never taken the time to look at the data. You don't have to spend a lot of time there, but you do have to at least walk in the room. Okay? We are going to do some math tonight. Okay? If you can, if you're not driving, okay, if you're at a place where you can grab a blank sheet of paper or a notepad, I want you to grab a blank sheet of paper. Okay? We are going to do some math tonight. We're talking about money. Money requires us to do some math. Okay? So I want you to grab your blank sheet of paper and I want you to make two lists. The list on the left at the top of the page, you can write 2019. The list on the right, you can write 2020. I want you to write down everything you spent on marketing in both years. We should clarify that by marketing, I don't just mean advertising. I don't just mean digital. I don't just mean, oh, here's what I paid Yelp for the first 6 months, and then we weren't getting any patients, so I canceled it. Marketing is much more than advertising and much more than digital. If you have a subscription to Solution Reach, you could certainly write that down in the list. Okay? This exercise works better if you put things side by side. We had Solution Reach in 2019, we have it again in 2020, and it costs us $249 a month, $299 a month, $329 a month. Some of you wheeled and dealed during COVID and got better rates. Some of your vendors offered you, hey, listen, if you stay with us during this and ink a new agreement, we're going to reduce your fee. Some of them didn't. Some of you have no idea. Okay? If we were doing this workshop in person, I would have given you a few assignments. One of the assignments would have been to bring a copy of last year's profit and loss. I know, I'm married to an accountant. Okay? And you would have looked at that profit and loss statement, and we would have gone down to the section that talks about marketing and advertising. And then you would have made this list, and you would have looked to see if they match. You may still wish to do that. Okay? Make your lists of everything you spend. Why do I want both years? Okay? Why would I want to look at both 2019 and 2020? In marketing, we look at trends. In marketing, we look at results. In marketing, we look at what stayed the same and what changed. What you're really developing is a look back at what you elected to continue and what you chose to start and stop. Tell me in the chat, do your lists look the same or different? Do your lists look the same or different? Okay. A couple people say different, a couple people say the same. Is there a right answer? One of the key concepts you're going to walk away from tonight is that you should compare you to you. In fact, write that at the top of your list. Me versus me. My practice compared to my practice. Part of the problem with all these Zoom meetings that we're so fortunate to attend and really hear some exceptional content without having to get on a plane, although we all long for that a little bit, is that we're comparing ourselves to everyone else in the room. We do this at in-person events too. Somebody stands up and says, well, I have 4 locations and I'm doing $1.2 million at each, and I want to grow them to 3 million, and I'm spending roughly $500,000 on marketing a year. And right out of the gate, you're going, oh, well, I'm not doing that, or I'm doing more than that. We seem to compare. Comparison produces 2 feelings. One of superiority, I'm better than that guy, or inferiority. Oh, well, I'm not doing any of that. Does that mean I'm a failure? Neither of which is productive. If you really want your marketing dollar to go farther, stop comparing yourself to everybody else. It's okay to talk to your colleagues, but compare apples to apples. And you're gonna have to look not at how many home runs, not at how many RBIs, not at how many strikeouts, but at some different statistics, okay? Let's start by dispelling some common myths about some of those statistics that we would look at. The first myth is that counting new patients, like bodies, is the best way to measure marketing success. Listen, I know why we do it. It's easy. How many patients did we get from the internet last month? Well, 17 or 70. Okay, well, that feels pretty good because the schedule was full. Many of you went through periods of feast or famine in the past 12 months. When the schedule was bursting at the seams, you probably weren't as concerned with new patients. When there were gaps and holes in the schedule, you went, oh yeah, we probably need to revisit that whole marketing plan. Measuring bodies is the worst way to measure marketing success. You should know the main sources of new patient production. This is not hard to get, as long as in every single patient file, the referral source has been entered. Whether you have Dentrix or EagleSoft or Open Dental or PracticeWorks or SoftDent or Curve, there is a place where a referral source can be entered. When's the last time you audited those referral sources? When's the last time you looked at a new patient summary that broke down, well, we got 17 new patients from the internet last month, and it looks like there's 15 new patients here that are missing a referral source. It's a lot easier to fix at the end of the month than it is when somebody like me comes along at the end of the year and goes, we have no idea where these 200 people came from. And more importantly, they were worth $500,000 in revenue, and we don't have a clue. In this particular practice last year, a third of the new patient production came from word of mouth. It's the big blue chunk on the pie chart. A third of the new patient production came from the internet. And the other third came from all those other things. The big picture matters, okay? Don't count bodies, count production. And you can't count production without a referral source, okay? The next myth is that the only way to grow is to get more people. For many people, one of the first things I ask them, we meet at a seminar. Hi, I'm Christy. Hi, I'm Dr. Smith. Nice to meet you, Dr. Smith. Tell me why you came to the conference today. Well, I'm trying to figure out how I can grow 10% every year for the next 5 years before I retire. I'm trying to figure out how to grow because I want to add a second location. I'm trying to figure out how to grow because I want an associate. I'm trying to figure out how to grow because I want to grow my practice enough to sell it. There's all kinds of answers, but the common theme is usually growth. Very few people will come to a marketing seminar and say, yeah, I really want to shrink, okay? And they sign up for the seminar thinking, well, new patients must be the answer, okay? In most practices, the majority of the production does not come from new patients. It comes from existing people. Dentistry has a built-in reoccurring revenue model. And in many comprehensive practices, when we tell somebody, here's $10,000 of dentistry that we found, they work through that over several years, okay? There are some exceptions, of course. In endo, it's a one-shot deal, okay? In emergency-based dentistry, it's a one-shot deal. Ortho's a little different, peds is a little different, but in general dentistry, when I look at what an average new patient is worth, that tells me a lot. Do you know what an average new patient's worth in your practice? And when I say average, I mean in the first year. Again, this is a really easy statistic to get, but it's one that nobody ever looks at because you have to run a couple of reports and you have to do some division. In Dentrix, you run this report called the new patient summary. And then I run a production summary for production for the same time period. I might look at it for a year. So let's say in 2020 that my practice did $2 million. And let's say I collected all 2 million of it. When I run the new patient summary in Dentrix, it's going to tell me this is how many new patients I saw, and this is how much production we did. Let's say we find out that we did $500,000 on new patients. That means I did the other $1.5 million on existing, okay? And if somebody coming to that marketing seminar says, hey, I want to grow, is it going to be easier to influence the existing patients who've already been in the office, in many cases, many times, or to get more new people? Well, it depends. It depends if the existing people have dentistry left to do, or if you've been practicing for 25 years and really we're just seeing them for hygiene. It depends if you are comprehensive in your diagnosis. In this particular example, in this office, a new patient, let's just round up, on the average is worth $1,600. So, since you're thinking like a baseball manager now, the thought is, if a new patient's worth $1,600 in the first year, how much would I be willing to spend to go get them? Tell me in the chat. The new patient in your office, let's say we found out, was worth $1,600 in the first year. We haven't even talked about if they're coming back for years 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, but let's just say the first year they're worth $1,600. How much would you spend to get them? Somebody says $100. Somebody says $400. Okay? Nobody so far has said $15.99. Okay? Many of you have in your mind an expected return on investment. That's probably come from a couple of places. Maybe you're comparing previous marketing activities. Well, you know, when I did this ad, or when I was with this PPC firm, a new patient was costing me about $300. So I don't want to spend any more than that. Guess what, guys? People's average production per new patient, 2019 versus 2020, in many places, it changed. Do you know if it changed in your office? First of all, we had fewer months to see people. So the assumption is, well, of course, my new patient revenue would be down in 2020 compared to 2019. I have some practices where that's true. I have other practices where exactly the opposite is true. Because people were locked out of dentistry, they got tired of bleeding gums. They got tired of the crown that didn't quite fit and the tooth that was kind of painful, but it's not really that painful. And then they were ready to do it. So new patient revenue actually went up, even though we didn't see as many people, even though we weren't open as many days. And again, when I say that, you're automatically going to comparison. Well, I think ours was higher. Well, I think ours was lower. If you don't know, go find out. Because as your new patient revenue adjusts, your marketing budget has to adjust accordingly. I have a large group of clients who they saw more big cases accepted in 2020 than ever before. And if you would have asked me if I thought that was going to be a byproduct of COVID, I would have said, I don't think there's any way that's going to happen. But people had money to spend in some markets. The Disney money, the cruise money, the VRBO money. And in other markets, some of you that practice in those, the majority of their patients were essential workers who never had that kind of money to begin with. And so now when their life got very stressful, their new patient revenue went down. Every practice is different. Know your data. In some cases, an easier way for you to grow might be to look at all of the people we saw at least once in the past 24 months, and can we increase their average revenue? Not get more new people, because the acquisition cost of new people right now in my space has doubled or tripled because of the competitiveness of the space. Okay? Let's dig a little deeper. In many cases, people come to me and say, Christy, it's not a volume problem I have. I have the volume of patients. You just taught me that body count is not a great way to measure success. In most practices, in really any business, there's a first-class cabin. Today is February 10th. For many of the practices that I work with for the last 8 weeks, we've been digging into the first-class cabin. Here's what I mean. The pie chart on the left represents the breakdown of bodies. In fact, if you look in this particular practice, there were 74 people who didn't do anything. How is that possible? How could they? Well, we did complimentary consultations. That's the big blue chunk of 74 people. If you look on the right, there's no big blue chunk because there was no production that came from those people. Then you look at that green chunk of the pie, and there's roughly 325 people that did between $1 and $999. I call this insurance land. It's kind of like Candyland, but without the prizes. Okay. I also call this periodontally healthy millennials who didn't have significant restorative dentistry to do. If you look at the pie chart on the left between the big blue, dark blue, and the green, that's about half my new patients. If you look at the pie chart on the right, half my new patients were only responsible for 8% of my new patient revenue. If I'm limited by capacity, if I'm limited by hours, if I'm limited by, I cannot find another hygienist to replace the one that quit, is this the group I want more of? I prefer to look at the purple and the gray with that little tiny sliver of light blue, because that for me is a little more than 100 people. And those 100 people were responsible for almost 70% of the new patient production. I don't need to know everything about everybody in my practice, but I absolutely need to know who is in my first class cabin. Where did they come from? Have they written a review? How have I thanked them for becoming a patient? Like attracts like. We have a limited amount of time and money in our marketing budget. A couple of hours spent at a team meeting or with a glass of wine on a Friday after work, and I know it's not very sexy, and I know it's not writing a check, and I know it's not running a Facebook ad, going back through and identifying your first class cabin patients and then doing something about it may be your best marketing strategy this year. Who is in your first class cabin? This is a new patient summary like I was talking about. This is what it looks like right out of Dentrix. All of these patients, if you look at their referral source, are Google patients. Okay? I think we can kind of get past the patients who come from the internet are terrible patients. It's just not true. The data does not reflect that. And if you look at this particular office, here's all these patients who came from Google. The column right after their referral source is their treatment plan. I've got some people who came from the internet who have $5,000 treatment plan. I've got some people who have no treatment plan. Do you load all your treatment plans into the computer? Do you trust and then verify? Just like referral sources? I've got all kinds of ages, 26, 31, 30, 44, 27, 44, 54, right? Do you know the ages that your internet marketing attracts? How much have they actually done? Are they scheduled to come back? I know what this practice spent to attract all these patients from Google. If I add up all the completed treatment, they more than paid for their investment. They even achieved the goal of the ROI. The problem is that very last column off to the right is a whole bunch of people who aren't ever coming back. And if that's your practice, your marketing budget is going to be more. That funnel that whittles people down and finally gets them in the office, when you don't reappoint them, they're off into somebody else's potential funnel. When you reappoint them, you're at least putting them back in the middle of your own funnel. It's a better chance than somebody who knows nothing about you at the top. Okay? There are very similar reports in all the major dental softwares. You should look at this. Somebody in your office should look at this, because if you do, I guarantee you will spend less, because you'll stop spending on things that don't work. You'll stop investing in tactics that don't attract the kind of patients you want. And you may identify some operational leaks in your funnel. This practice has so many no patients that if somebody doesn't reappoint, they don't care because there's 10 other people waiting in line. Is that you? Or are you the opposite? Are you the practice that's so focused on making sure we retain every single one and we just need more of them? Okay. Let's take a step back. Because I've been talking about the internet and I've been talking about money and I've been talking about spending and tracking and funnels. Let's take a step back and think about where the quote unquote best patients historically really come from. And most everyone will tell me other patients. Word of mouth in any business generally produces the best potential new customer. And yet, most practitioners can't tell me their word of mouth factor. Okay? It's a real easy way to calculate it. I want you to think right now how many active patients you have in the practice. Some of you are knee deep in your data. Like you've got me over here to the right, you've logged into Dental Intel and you're going, okay, where's this statistic? I need to find this out, right? You're Tom Brady and you're looking at the thing on your arm going, where's this data? Where's this data? Where's this data? Okay. Take a breath. Stay with me. Think about how many active patients you have. I know there's all kinds of ways to define it, but let's just agree that how you define it is what matters. Whether it's people who've been seen in the last 12 months, whether it's people who've been seen in the last 24 months, whether it's the dental software says they're active, which by the way is a terrible measurement, in my opinion, or whether it's people who are pre-appointed, whatever you define as active, let's land there. Okay. Let's say it's 1,000. Then I want you to think about, well, how many new patients last year did I get from other patients? If you don't know, you need to find out. I bet your office manager knows. Okay. Isn't it funny how the front office bears all the responsibility for keeping track of the marketing data? Okay. If I've got 1,000 active patients and I got 100 new patients from patient referrals last year, my word of mouth factor is 10%. That's easy math. In most practices, owners believe that word of mouth is something that's out of their direct control. Oh, you know, Christy, some months we get a lot of patients from other patients, and some months it's kind of dead. You mean I can control that? You can influence it. Part of it starts by just paying attention to what it is. I met with a client late last year, and we looked at the 3 main goals we had for the practice in the coming 12 months. One of them was to grow their marketing word of mouth factor. We knew that only 3% of their active patient base referred somebody else in the previous year. And the doctor said, I want that to double. See, the math gets fun here because if you've got a big practice, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 active patients, and you have a 10% word of mouth factor, that might be enough new patients that's all you need to do. And so when somebody comes along to sell you some new widget or promise you the sun, moon, and stars with a marketing investment that you've never heard of, but your buddy said it's a good idea, you can politely say, no, thank you. My word of mouth factor sustains me. A lot of you probably know this intuitively because you don't have a big, robust marketing plan, and yet you get enough new patients that your practice kind of hums and chums along. And the word of mouth patients replace the ones you lose to natural attrition. Okay? But it's worth the exercise to go and look at what it is. Because dentistry has a natural word of mouth factor. Okay? Practices that are exceptional at word of mouth get close to 20%. Practices that really aren't doing much, might be 3%, 4%, 5%. Again, don't compare you to anybody else, compare you to you. If you've never looked at this statistic, right now it's not good or bad, it just is. And then decide if you want to move it. The advantage to patients that come from word of mouth, well, there's a long list. Usually they're the cheapest. Usually they stay the longest. Usually they refer more people. Usually they say yes to most of the treatment. In fact, when we think about marketing investments, very, very rarely, go back and look at your list. When I asked you to make a list of all the marketing tactics you had in 2019 and 2020 and what you spent, did anybody on their list allocate somebody's time? It's one thing to say, we're going to have a Facebook page. It's an entirely different matter to say, here's who's going to create the content and post it, and here's how much of their time it's going to take. Again, this gets dumped onto the front desk. Oh, well, you're in front of a computer all day, so you're the right person to do it. You know who actually spends the most time with the patient and is most valuable in developing word of mouth? The clinical team. Does the clinical team take responsibility for marketing? No, because we never put it in their job description. It really should be in everybody's job description. But if you're being honest, and the most effective way to grow is by increasing your word of mouth factor, that is going to take someone's time. Writing thank you cards, having a patient of the week, having a patient of the month, gathering video testimonials. These are word of mouth basics. And for some of us, March, April, May, we stopped all that because we were so focused on all the change that happened in our industry. And see, the thing is, we never went back to doing it. And now we're paying for it with our money or our time. When I ask people to make a list of what they spent on marketing, most people think of money. They don't think of time. They don't think of their time. They don't think of their team's time. And they certainly don't calculate the return on investment. Not accurately planning the time it will take to execute something is just as bad as running out of money halfway through your ad campaign. Not accurately planning out the amount of time is just as bad as running out of money. Be honest with yourself about your spend. I can make more money. I can't ever get back my time. Think about that. When you're creating a marketing plan for your practice, this is the run expectancy table. Look how easy it is. It's so much easier. And good news, we don't have one for every patient like baseball has one for every park. There are only 3 kinds of marketing. I know there's a lot of details, and I know I showed you that big fan with reach, act, convert, and there was a zillion companies you could hire. But if I distill marketing down to its core, there's only 3 kinds. Interruption. I'm interrupting the potential customer from whatever it is they're doing, and I'm trying to get them to pay attention to my ad. I'm trying to get them to think, yes, I should probably go to a dentist. Yes, I should go to this dentist. Yes, I should call. Yes, I should actually keep the appointment. Yes, I should say yes to the treatment. This is a lot of hurdles. This is where my funnel gets very, very narrow. It is the most expensive form of marketing. It is very appealing to many people because it requires the least amount of their time as an owner, the least amount of their time sending their team to a continuing education class, following up with their team to make sure they actually did it. The expected rate of return, 1 to 3. For every dollar that I spend on advertising, I expect that I will get at least $3 back in production in the first year or more. I go into it with my eyes open, expecting that I will convert half. I get 10 phone calls, I'm going to schedule 5. Of the 5, half are going to show up. Of the half are going to say yes. Again, my funnel gets very, very narrow, very, very fast. Why would anybody do it, Christy? You just told me it was the most expensive. It has the lowest rate of return and the lowest conversion rate. Well, because it works really fast. I don't have to wait for years and years. Growing word of mouth is an exceptional strategy, but I don't see my customers every day. So it's going to take me 6, 12, 18 months to double my word of mouth factor. It will pay off in the long run, but if you need butts in the chair to meet your minimum monthly cash requirement in the next 30 days, Word of mouth is not going to cut it. That's where you go to advertising. Because you go back to seeing patients and you write the check and the phone rings and you hope and you pray, or I at least hope and pray that you put your team in some level of training to convert those patients, because converting those patients is different than converting word of mouth. The other end of the spectrum, word of mouth, marketing with meaning, public relations, community, where the marketing itself actually enhances the life of the customer. Pre-COVID, I told everybody, you have to have a patient appreciation event every year. And then COVID hit and people went, oh my gosh, we can't have it anymore. Well, sure you can. Do it virtually. I'm not suggesting that you invite 100 patients on Zoom and have a party, but you can absolutely show your patients that you appreciate them with some type of virtual component. Don't quit just because it got a little tricky. It's usually the least amount of money. It takes the longest amount of time to plan and for it to work. But the return on investment is at least 1 to 20. In some cases, 1 to 30, 1 to 40, 1 to 50. And the conversion rate is 90%. Now my funnel doesn't look like this. Now my funnel looks like this. Not very fast, but very effective. And the internet is in the middle, which is why a lot of you have expanded your digital presence. You know advertising is expensive. You don't think you have the money in the budget for it. You've got enough new patients to keep you busy. You'd like a little bit more. You don't have 18 months to wait for this to work, but you don't need them tomorrow. This is your run expectancy table. Be honest with yourself. How much money and how much time have you put in your budget? Okay. And this is usually what we start to see. Okay. We look at people and where they came from. Well, Jennifer came from Yelp, and that cost us $250. When I add up what I spent with Yelp that month, and when I add up how many patients I got, a Yelp patient cost me $250. Her treatment plan was $1,250, not a lot to do. Okay. She did some of it in the first year. So if I calculate her ROI in the first year, it's 1 to 3. I spent $250. I got a patient who in the first year did $750. But see, I had some operational snafus. I was so busy when that COVID curve hit that we didn't reappoint her, and we didn't follow up with her, and we didn't email her or text her or chat her or call her. And so she didn't come back. So in 3 years, my ROI is exactly the same. Then there's Frank. He came from our Google ads. He's a little more expensive than a Yelp patient. He's a $10,000 case, but he wasn't quite ready. And so in the first year, he did the same as Jennifer. So the good news is I didn't lose money, but I didn't get anywhere near that 1 to 10 return that we seek in permission. Year 2, he came back. He kept his hygiene visits. Year 3, we built enough trust with him that he said yes to most of the treatment. Now I've got a better ROI than the average digital. This is next level. This is when you really understand how your dollar works and you make adjustments accordingly. This is what a CMO does for a Fortune 500 company. And if you don't have the time to do this, then make sure somebody can help you do it. Understanding your unique data is crucial to developing your unique plan. Okay? How can you get your dollar and your time to go farther than the 1 to 3, the 1 to 10, the 1 to 20? What do you think? What's a one-word answer? My dollar and my time will go farther with what? Throw your answer in the chat. My dollar and my time will go farther if I get a new office manager. Well, that's not a one-word answer, but how can you get your dollar and your time to go farther? Okay. We just had the Super Bowl. Lowest viewership of many recent Super Bowls, believe it or not. And the advertising world loves the Super Bowl. We measure and monitor and talk about it. And so we always, in the general public, have a favorite commercial. But if you look at the top ads by digital share of voice, in other words, how many people were talking about it? How many people were talking about it after the ad? Then these are the top three. The Mountain Dew ad with John Cena, where they literally said, listen, if you can tell us via Twitter how many of these major melon bottles you saw, you will win $1 million. Well, that's a hook. Of course, they had the best engagement. Okay. 51 billion, count them with a B, 51 billion impressions on social. Okay. Just because somebody's talking about your ad doesn't necessarily mean it was the winner. Jeep had that problem. Okay. 97 million social impressions, but the consensus was not, I'm going to go buy a new Jeep. The consensus was, why was Jeep being so preachy? Amazon Alexas with Michael P. Jordan, okay, 13 million social impressions, but 8 million earned online views, meaning people thought this was good enough to send it to somebody and say, go watch it. Do you want somebody talking about you because, hey, this was worth talking about, Jeep? Do you want somebody talking about you because they said there was a hook? Hey, listen, if you talk about me, I'll give you this. Or do you want somebody who found your content so compelling they couldn't help but tell someone? Your dollar and your time go farther with emotion. When your content emotionally connects with people. This is why you heard people saying, listen, get out your phone and make a video of yourself talking to your patients, okay? Talk about, listen, here, we're all here trying to deal with online school, just like the rest of you. Can't wait to see you back in the office. The authenticity of the emotion was far more valuable than $1,000 in paid Google ads, okay? Your dollar and your time will go farther with emotion. Okay. It's a good point for us to pause here for a second. Okay. Do you know what an average new patient is worth in your office? Do you know who's in your first class cabin? Okay. When you think about your marketing, does it look like the line on the top or does it look like the line on the bottom? Do you have a very clear plan? This is how we're going to get from point A to point B. Our goal is to grow our new patient revenue by $100,000 this year. Our goal is to reduce insurance dependency. Our goal is to grow total practice revenue by 15%. Our goal is to get rid of the garbage patients. Our goal is to get 10% more of the first class cabin patients. Please don't create a list of 20 things, no more than 3. What happens sometimes is the line on the bottom. We start with a clear plan and then things go haywire. Because yes, marketing can be messy. You start, you stop, you start again, you stop, you start again. You have an office manager that quits. You have a hygienist who's out for COVID for 2 weeks. Then somebody comes along and says, hey, listen, have you talked to my Google Ads guy? Because I think he can probably get you a better deal than your guy. External factors outside of your control happen. Internal factors operationally happens. And we get this big, messy, squiggly line. We eventually get there. It's just a heck of a lot harder, and I had to travel a lot farther. A great marketing plan will create a straight line without the mess. Okay? 5 rules. Rule number 1, be honest. Be honest with your time. How much time can you really dedicate to growing your word of mouth? How much time can you really dedicate to your web vendor to sit down and look at your conversion funnel? Where are we losing people? What pages are people abandoning on? And if you don't have a vendor that's asking these questions or presenting you with this information, get another vendor. Be honest with your money. Look at your P&L. Look at what you're actually spending. Some of it's probably misallocated. All the stuff we give people, that big stack of $10 Starbucks cards that I've got at the front desk for little customer service love when somebody's having a bad day or when they're running behind, or when I just want to send a thank you card for being an awesome patient and make them smile because they seem pretty bummed out about the fact that their 4 kids are all on Zoom school for a year and they're about to lose it. Is that in the marketing budget? Because it should be. Be honest with your time, your money, and your goals. Rule 2, have a plan. Have a plan that is based on your goals, your time, and your money. Have a plan that's based on your data, not somebody else's. Rule 3, TTA. Test, track, adjust. Remember that messy line? Some of you are caught in the test. Well, let's try this. 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 And you forget the other parts. Some of you are caught in the track. You're in analysis paralysis. Well, I got to have 17 reports to find out whether my website's really working or not. No, you don't. We can make it simple. And the third one is where most dentists fail, the adjust. I've got people who test, I've got people who track. More people than ever before have access to their data in real time. And yet, we don't change if it's not working. What will you start doing this year because the data tells you to do it? What will you stop doing this year because the data tells you to do it? How often should you adjust? Not every day, but probably more than once every 10 years. Most people adjust when an external factor comes along. There's a lot of people who adjusted their time and money budgets last March because an external factor forced them to. People who are operating with a clear marketing plan, that word of the year, pivot, it's just another word for adjust. They just adjusted. They didn't have to reinvent the wheel entirely. Many of their core strategies were still in place. Test, track, adjust. Number 4, connect emotionally with content. Stop posting stock photos. Stop using canned content. One video testimonial a week is not that hard to get and far more valuable than 5 or 6 posts of canned content from ABC social media firm that you're paying to do it. And number 5, be memorable. In his book, Word of Mouth Marketing, which if you haven't read it, get it. Or if you don't like to read, get it on Audible. It's an old book, Word of Mouth Marketing by Andy Cernovitz. If you're lazy and you don't like to read, you can find it on Blinkist, or you can download the 2-page PDF. There is no reason you shouldn't understand some key concepts in this book. First concept is nobody talks about stuff that's boring. Dentistry for a lot of people, guys, is boring. The great thing that happened as a result of COVID is people started talking to other people about their trip to the dentist, because what else were we going to talk about? I finally got to leave the house, right? And you never believe when I saw my dentist, gosh, Christy, it's great to see you. And I know you probably haven't had a chance to get out and go golfing, but we did get you this sleeve of golf balls. We have a little funny little coronavirus on it. We always want you to remember this year. How much does a sleeve of golf balls with the coronavirus logo cost, Johnny? You can probably get it on Amazon in the 3 seconds while I'm talking. It's the memory that they'll talk about. Rule 5, be memorable. Be honest, have a plan, test, track, adjust, connect emotionally with your content, and be memorable. Those are the 5 rules that will make your money and your time go farther. If you want help with a marketing plan that works, text us. We help clients develop 12-month marketing plans and budgets based on their data, their practice, their ideal patient. You can text, I want my plan tonight, if you're so inclined, to 916-947-1855. You should have a list of things as a result of tonight's meeting, whether you text me or not, that you're going to start doing. You should have a list of things you're going to stop doing. And you might have a list of things that you're going to continue doing. Great marketing is not complicated. Great marketing requires your commitment. Your commitment does not have to be hours and hours of time and pages of reports. But if you want a consistent result, you have to commit to consistently looking at your data, to consistently meeting with your team, and test, track, and adjust accordingly. When you do that, you'll end up like the Cubs. When the rain delay comes out, you'll know what to say. You'll know who to send back out to the plate. Your entire success plan won't be thrown off by an external factor that was out of your control. And you'll walk away ending the longest drought in sports history. My wish for you tonight is that as a result of today's February 10th webinar, you have a better marketing plan for 2021 and every year after. Thanks for coming.
Wow. My head hurts, Christy. There was so much good stuff. I can't even begin to tell you. And I've heard you lecture half a dozen, 9, 10 times. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, right? And how many times have I, in 36 years of being a dental CPA, and I'm sure your husband, Jim, who's one of the best in the country at being a dental CPA, has told you, you get a dentist that says, okay, I'm going to spend $10,000. We're going to send these mailers out. That's our marketing plan, right? No, it's ongoing. I mean, how long did it take Apple to build a brand? How long did it take Amazon to build a brand, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about here, correct?
One of the things that I really hope everybody learned tonight is that marketing is not a reactionary decision. It's not, oh my gosh, I have to do this. A well thought out marketing plan, you're right, Art, takes time. It takes time to build that. But if you do it right, and guys, if you've never thought about marketing this way, that's okay. It's never too late. If you start today by saying, we're going to improve our word of mouth by being consistent, you're going to save tens of thousands of dollars in mailers and SEO and bad ideas and people that are trying to sell snake oil. Seems like there's a new marketing company popping up in the dental industry all the time. And for lack of a better expression, just taking advantage of the fact that people don't understand some of these basic principles.
And also, Christy, it's about not only just getting new patients, but getting the right kind, like you were saying, getting that first class cabin patient. I mean, if we have doctors who are members of PPOs and they're getting 50, 60%, and they get 100 new patients, they're going to be working 100 times harder for less money. Whereas, you know, I mean, there are ways that you can market for high-end patients. I mean, you do this all the time, right?
There are ways you can get more of the patients you want. It just requires a little thought. It just requires a little bit of digging and a little bit of a plan, right? It requires sending Bieber to the mound, but you have to know where Bieber came from. Okay.
Yeah. Again, it's good that I didn't coach Bieber, but that's besides the point. But thank you so much for what great information tonight. Folks, I would encourage you, take Christy up on her offer. Christy is the most, I don't know, is unpresumptuous a word? I mean, she doesn't.
I don't know.
Sometimes I wonder how that you don't market yourself as well as you should market yourself with all your great information. I have seen the reports that you have put out for people, and I have seen everything that you've done and how comprehensive it is. Guys, if you want an idea of what you're doing, I mean, what's a new patient, Christy? $1,000 to $2,000 in the first year, or is that give or take something like that? I mean,
just depends on the
market,
practice. Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, if you were able to bring in an extra 10 or 20 new patients, and then you multiply that by what they do and what they refer to you. I mean, that's what we find. And I'll tell you what, I can't tell you how many doctors, just simply, I ask them, do you ask for referrals? And well, not a lot. I said, you mean that means not at all? Well, no. Well, then how do your patients know that you need new patients? Well, I guess they don't. I mean, I've got stories about that I can't even get to tell you, but
we could tell stories all night, couldn't we?
You and I could, but we'll let all these folks get to the rest of their evening. And you are probably way past your bedtime there in Columbus, Ohio. And I won't ask you the temperature because that's why I lose all my, I mean, half the ADCPA is freezing right now. So I have to be real quiet about that. So, but so to all of you out there, thank you so much for taking your valuable time. Please join us next week. Same time, a week from Wednesday, we're going to be talking about transitions. And then next month, we're going to be talking, mark down March 10th, tell your friends about it, because I'm going to teach you how to get lots and lots of free government money. Washington's doling it out, and there you go. So March 10th, we're going to be talking about how to interact with a PPP. We're going to give you updates on the HHS plan, what you have to do for that, and the employee retention tax credit. So Christy, unfortunately, I only get to see you on the computer. I can't wait to see you and Jim and the rest of the academy at our meeting, hopefully, in fingers crossed, in Miami in October. And to all of you, God bless everyone. Thank you. I have a 5-word saying that I use on my podcast. And by the way, I do a weekly podcast called The Art of Dental Finance and Management with Art Wiederman CPA. And this morning, I interviewed the president of the American Dental Association. That interview will be on next week. That was really fun. My 5 words are, folks, failure is not an option. And that's what I've been living with. So work on your practice, not just in your practice. Marketing is part of it. We're going to be bringing you a whole bunch of great information, dental consultants. We're going to teach you about student loans, hygiene, financial planning, cybersecurity. We've got a lot of great stuff coming up in 2021. So Christy Boats, you are wonderful. I am proud to call you my friend. Thank you for this great information. And we'll see you next time. All right, I think we're done.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
Take care, guys. And again, if there's anything we can do for you at Eide Bailey, get a hold of us and we'll be happy to help you. Take care. Bye-bye.